Welcome back to this very special edition of The Tea with April. And we've got none other than one of our favorites, Reverend William Barber. Reverend Barber is the head of Moral Mondays, and he's got something special this Monday. Reverend Barber, tell us about your Moral Mondays in these 10 states that you're going to this time.
Actually, we've added an 11th state, but
Really?
launching from Memphis, where the Christian Church Disciples of Christ is having its International General Assembly. We are marching on the Senate offices in 11 southern states with caskets, led by clergy and impacted people, to put a face on the deadliness of this big, bad, deadly, ugly bill. We're going south because south is where they try so hard to split people, but there's a new South rising. 40% of the South are now poor and low wage. We have Black and white and Latino going. We are going with fact sheets on those caskets that show the number of people. The highest number of people that will lose Medicaid will be in the South. The largest number of rural hospitals will be in the South. A third of all white people live in the South. The highest percentage of Black people that will be kicked off Medicaid is in the South. The highest number, period, of people kicked off will be white. All of these things are too often not talked about, and we walk away from. Every senator in the South except one, April, in North Carolina, voted for this ugly, destructive, deadly bill. What we're saying is this is retrogression. You know, the reason Rosa Parks sat down was because of retrogression. We got freedoms after the Civil War, and then there was retrogression for the next 100 years. This is retrogression. You're talking about people who have health care that are now being taken. The majority of the people in these states are elderly and disabled that will lose, and children and veterans. And we have to make sure that a face is put on this death and who's losing health care, who's losing food stamp, and we can't be afraid of the South. So this is a beginning. Moral Monday, simultaneously, 11 states in the South. And let me give them to you. Alabama, Arkansas, Florida, Georgia, Louisiana, Mississippi, North Carolina, South Carolina, Tennessee, Texas, and West Virginia.
West Virginia.
That's right. And the people going will actually, in fact, West Virginia, you know, is 95% white, but the people going will be clergy in full vestments, Jews, Muslims, Christians, and impacted people carrying those caskets to the Senate office, attempting to get in and to say to them, you need to rescind this, you do something, but you will not do this, and just walk away from it.
Now, you say you want to put a face on this, right?
That's right.
You're saying you're carrying caskets. Will there be any bodies? And the reason why I ask is because years ago, one of our team members remembers this. There was someone who wanted to put a face on HIV and AIDS during the Clinton years. And I'll never forget this. They got a permit to have a funeral on Pennsylvania Avenue in front of the White House. They actually carried the casket with the body. They had this big Grim Reaper with a sickle and everything. And they had a service. You say you want to put a face on it. Will these caskets have bodies in them?
This time they won't. But remember, this is what they will have in them. Everybody that's going to impact the people are people who stand to die and stand to lose. People who have disability, people with cerebral palsy, people who have daughters with mechanical hearts. And we just had a press conference and they were talking about those things. And so the casket's going to be decorated with the numbers, and then people will give their real testimony. But remember, we're saying this is a season, not an end. We're going to continue to do Moral Mondays in DC, but we're not going to leave the South and these states untouched. Moral Monday actually is state-based. You know, for 2 years we've been in North Carolina, and we went straight into the legislative hall. What these senators and others want is just to go away. They want to go home and tell the lie. This was about fraud. This is about cleaning up things, when in fact it's about death. It's about
they're saying,
in fact, let me tell you something. In those states I just named, Alabama, we're talking about 42,000 people projected to lose. Arkansas, we're talking about 123,000. In Louisiana, we're talking about 291,000. In North Carolina, we're talking about 307,000 people. In Texas, we're talking about over 300,000 people who are expected to lose. And we're talking about a total of 1.5 million people in just these 11 states who could lose their health care, be vulnerable to death, health care they're already getting now. And you remember, all of these states also blocked this expanding the Affordable Care Act. So this is the places where people are getting a double whammy, and they've tried to frame it, that is quote unquote lazy people not working, when in fact that's not really what's going on. In addition to that, it's going to cost these states $160 billion. We're talking about hundreds of hospitals being closed, rural hospitals. And I'm going to give you one quick story, April. When North Carolina had refused to accept Medicaid expansion, we were in Belhaven. There was a Republican mayor down there that broke with the Republicans and the people there, and we marched with them to fight to keep a hospital open. And eventually it closed because of Medicaid Affordable Care being denied. In the first week, a lady named Portia died in a high school parking lot 5 minutes from that hospital because she was waiting on a helicopter to come in. If 1 week earlier, she would have lived. 1 week after it closed, she was 2 hours away from the nearest hospital.
Oh my God.
And she wasn't but 43 years old.
Younger than me. So basically, younger than both of us. So basically, you're saying HR1 that was passed into law and signed by the president on the 4th of July is already in effect. Hospitals are closing. This is what you're saying, right?
In the South, in a sense, because none of these states expanded health care. So you're talking about the places where they already were being blocked from the Affordable Care Act, already facing retrogression, already having a different kind of healthcare in the South as opposed to where you might have in, say, Pennsylvania, New York. And the projections, we just found out today on the interview that the Birmingham Advertiser is projecting 3 or 4 more hospitals closing in the next month or so. Rural hospitals. Because even the projections are forcing closing.
Yeah, we talked to Maryland's governor last week on the Tea with April, and he's very concerned about places like the Eastern Shore in Maryland.
Right.
He's very concerned, and he came very solemn and resolute about this. He was very concerned. He's like, there is no marrying of states' rights and this whole that he believes or he feels is happening because of these cuts with the big, beautiful bill. Now, the next question I want to ask you, and before I ask you, we remember when Hakeem Jeffries, the minority leader in the House, stood for 8 hours and 44 minutes and gave statements, put a face on the hurt that's coming, talked about names and gave places and gave stories. Then the Speaker of the House, Mike Johnson, came back and said it's all lies.
Right.
Hakeem Jeffries was talking about realities and they were saying it's lies. Do you believe that when you go to these state houses, these 11 state houses with your casket,
the actual offices, we're going to the office of
right.
When
you go to the offices with these caskets at these state houses, with these caskets at these state houses, they're not going to only call you a liar, but they may say you're being performative. What do you say to that?
You keep going. We said that, they said that in Moral Monday, but we won. We ended up beating them at in the court. We ended up having beating them the next election. We sent home a governor who said that very thing. He said it was just Moral Monday foolishness, and he dismissed us. His poll numbers dropped. He lost. Remember, we need to really do a reexamination of the South. In the South now, poor and low-wage people make up 40% of the electorate. Dr. King had said, if we ever woke up in the South and recognized that poor and low-wage white folk and Black folk and Latinos could form a powerful voting bloc, in the South right now, all you need is 10% of poor, low-wage people who have not voted in the last election, many states, to vote, and they change the outcome. In some states like North Carolina, if just 10% more of Black people who didn't vote in the last election were to have voted, Trump wouldn't have won North Carolina. We got to claim our power, but people aren't talking about it. We just assume. And so what we do is you keep going back. The only way you can deal with a constant lie is to push constant truth. So that's
Mm,
why this is a beginning. They will have to call their own constituents lies to their faith. They will have to call these clergy folk lies. They will have to, when we start promoting this funeral is because somebody died because of lack of health care. When we put up tickers that show another rural hospital closed today, you tell the truth because it's not what they say, it's what the people say. And right now, for instance, 68% of Mississippians, I was reading somewhere, want health care after COVID because thousands of people died during COVID in these same
bingo.
states because they didn't have access to health care. And they weren't just black people. So we're putting together a moral fusion coalition. I've lived in the South. I've worked in the South. You know, when Obama broke through in Virginia, Florida, South Carolina, and North Carolina, and Georgia, it was a signal to us that the old Southern strategy is not as strong as it once was, but you got to work it. You got to constantly get people to come together, not around color and party, but around pain and policy and the real problems that they face. So each of our efforts on Monday will be diverse. And these folk are hot. I mean, I just got off the line with a white lady from West Virginia and a black woman from Georgia. And these sisters were saying the same thing, different colors, same thing. One state, you know, predominantly white, and the other state heavy black. They're not playing. They were actually saying, we're glad we're hooking up. If we can get that kind of hookup, it's not a heavy lift.
Hurt and pain do not differentiate. That's
That's
what,
right.
and what,
And when Jeffries the other day quoted me, he said that too often these legislators come and they pray, P-R-A-Y, but then they pray, P-R-E-Y, on the most vulnerable. He was quoting directly from the moral movement. We've used that for years. And he's exactly right. And we have to point out that hypocrisy. It's another reason we're going to the South. It is the Bible Belt. So that's why clergy, we're not going, I'm not like, I won't be in a t-shirt Monday, I'm in a full robe vestment. We're going, if they say we're being demonstrative, we are. Performative, we are being performative, but not for foolishness. We are refusing to allow them to have the narrative.
and guys, remember this. The Southeast has the largest number of Black folks in this nation, right?
Exactly.
And that's why there was such oppression. You wonder why there was such oppression in the South, because that's where Black folks are. And in Appalachia, you got poor white America.
Exactly.
This thing is big, but let me tell you, while you were talking, one thing, and I'm going to end on this. You talked about the casket and putting a face on it. You know who I thought about? Mamie Till Mobley, who put a face on racism and hate when
Exactly.
her son was killed in Money, Mississippi. His name was Emmett Till. Little Chicago boy, went down south. And they lied on him and they took him from his bed and beat him and killed him. And she opened the casket so people could.
Exactly.
And you said, this time you're not going to have a body in it. Ooh.
But let me tell you what we are doing. We're going to have the numbers up there, and we are recruiting clergy now who will talk with families. And if their family member dies because of the lack of health care, they will allow cameras to come in. They allow the media to come in and say, this is what policy murder looks like. I am not, as a bishop in the church, going to preach another funeral over somebody and lie on God and say God called them home when government killed them. I'm going to ask the family to let me tell the truth. God welcomed them home, but God did not call them home. This person died prematurely. This person died unnecessarily. This is the level of truth we must tell in this moment. It can't be half truths.
Reverend Barber says this is what policy murder looks like. He's taking caskets and people and clergy to these offices in the state capitol, these lawmaker offices for Moral Mondays in 11 states. Reverend Barber, tell us how people can be a part of Moral Mondays in these 11 states that you announced.
Go to repairsofthebreach.org. It's that simple, www.breachrepairs.org. All the information is there. Fact sheets are there. Flyers are there. 11 o'clock simultaneously. I'll be in Memphis, Tennessee, with other clergy and one of the major denominations in this country. But there'll be people in all of these states. We're tired, but we're not the kind of tired that's quit. We're kind of tired of saying, you're not going to keep lying. You're not going to keep saying this is about one thing when really it is about greed and billionaires, and you want to cut healthcare so you can turn around and privatize it and make people have to pay unnecessarily. And we're going to point out one more hypocrisy. Every one of these senators gets free healthcare from the people that elected them. And how shameful that is that you take the best healthcare, Walter Reed Hospital, only because you got elected. And we pay for it, but then you don't want the people that elected you to have the same thing.
Always great to have you for the tea, because you knocked the pot over as always. You spilled some tea. Reverend William Barber and his Moral Mondays. 11 states, count them 11. I counted them with him. And you're going to be in Memphis, right?
In Memphis, that's right.
He's going to be in Memphis. So, and Memphis, Tennessee at the state capitol, and all other clergy are going to be in those other 10 states. But it's 11 states that they're going to have Moral Mondays with this time. When are you going to be back at the Capitol, the nation's capital?
In August. We'll come back in August because this is the beginning of some routing through the South that we're going to be doing and traveling and adding other states. But back in August, we're not going anywhere. I mean, they arrested people, but they arrested our consciousness. I've been arrested twice in the Capitol, but people want to come. And we're going to the Rotunda, and we're deliberately not going and taking a legislator with us so, kind of get a covering. We're exposing the hypocrisy. You want prayer in the school, but you don't want us to pray in the Capitol unless we're praying for your meanness and for your bad policies. We're not going to do that. We got to expose this. It's just immoral, and it's constitutionally inconsistent, and it's economically insane. We didn't even get a chance, April, today to talk about the number of jobs that they're going to hurt in these same states. So the same states that the senators voted for this big, bad, ugly, destructive, deadly bill, these same states block living wages. These same states block labor rights. These same states don't want people to have SNAP and food stamps. And yet these same states are the poorest states among us.
There you go.
Yeah.
Moral Mondays, this Monday, in 11 state capitals. Reverend Barber, thank you so much for joining us for this special edition of the Tea with April on the Contrarian, always. Thank you, and come back and talk to us anytime. Thank you, Reverend Barber.